Welcome back to Bonjour Sports Talk. Ben Lyons here live on Prime. It is Wednesday, March 15th. All eyes in New York City are on Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, so we thought we would balance things out a little bit. And welcome to the show. Joining us in studio, Aaron Nagler, of course, one of the biggest Packer fans we know, founder of Cheesehead TV, a big Packers guy, of course, out there in the World Wide Web. So how are you feeling? And thank you for being in studio with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I feel trepidatious. Is that allowed? Look, we've been sitting here waiting and waiting and waiting as Packers fans for official word here. I know we're going to hear from Rodgers later today on McAfee. Just, at the point of we are very grateful and appreciative and really happy for everything Aaron Rodgers has done in a Green Bay Packers uniform, but it is definitely time to turn the page. We're just ready for that page to be turned.
I feel like, when I talk to my dad about this, he's a big Vikings fan, Oh,
yeah.
And Jim Burke's saying,
Shout out, Dad.
Yeah, Jim Burke's saying, he's like, what, my best case scenario would be Aaron Rodgers said he's going to come back to the Packers. When a Vikings fan says that, that it's like ready to turn the page. But if Aaron Rodgers comes back and says, I'm not effing leaving. What is that? What do the Packers do with that? That can't be the scenario at this point.
That's the doomsday scenario. I mean, it feels weird to say that about the franchise quarterback, four-time MVP, but the Packers are ready to turn the page, and they're ready to start Jordan Love. And I think everything we've heard from the Packers, whether it's Mark Murphy, the president and CEO, whether it's Brian Gutekunst, the general manager during the Combine, the whole conversation around Aaron Rodgers has changed from the franchise. As far as the last 2 years, his summer of discontent a couple summers ago, they were begging him to stay. It was very much, he's our quarterback, he's our leader. All of that rhetoric is gone now. It's all, we have to have a conversation. We think Jordan is ready to play. I mean, they're telling you what they want to do, and I think Aaron knows that, the Packers know that, the Jets definitely know that. It's just a question of, I think, hammering out whatever compensation this trade is going to entail.
Now, so if Aaron does move on, who's going to be the most beloved quarterback for the Packers? Is it going to be Brett Favre?
Boy.
Or is it going to be Aaron Rodgers?
It's going to be Bart Starr. I mean, I'm a Bart guy through and through. But look, you can't talk about it without everything that's going on with Brett off the field currently.
Oh, but let's talk. Let's put all that away. Let's just what do you play on the field?
It's really hard to kind of compartmentalize that way. I think, regardless of all that, though, there's no doubt that both quarterbacks entered very different situations, right? You talk about this a lot with Packers fans, and Brett came along at a time when the Packers had been absolutely terrible for decades. I mean, I remember
Don Majkowski. I loved him.
I love Majkowski. I mean, Majkowski was a ton of fun, the Magic Man.
Yeah.
All the comebacks. But I mean, they had been bad for so long. I remember as a kid hearing stories about the Packers could fold. I mean, that was a very real conversation going around Green Bay. I mean, NFL guys would be told, if you don't shape up, we're going to ship you to Green Bay. It was like considered the Siberia of the NFL. And then to have this guy, this amazing talent, and to watch the team start to succeed with Brett, I mean, that was a very magical moment as far as Packers fans go. So Brett obviously had a very kind of strong connection to the fan base. Then Aaron comes along, and there's no way he's ever going to be as good as Brett, and he's better. That's what's crazy. Yeah. Like, never in a million years would you have told me that the three-time MVP was going to be surpassed by this kid they took at 24 back in 2005, and yet he did it. And that's just, that's unthinkable. So now we're turning the page to Jordan, and you're like, well, it's never going to happen 3 times in a row. And I'm like, okay, probably not. But yeah. I think there's no question at this point it's probably Aaron, given everything. But, Brett, again, in the context of when he played, you'll never take that away from those teams and Brett and everything they accomplished because of everything that they were kind of coming out of.
Brett, the 3-time MVP, Aaron, the 4-time MVP. Is pressure on Jordan?
But Jordan's got to do it 5 times.
I mean, that's just how this works,
I think that's obvious, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's next.
It's amazing that you've been able to turn your fandom for the Packers into part of your life and career now. And obviously, it's such a fanatical fan base, passionate fan base. And you mentioned the idea that before Brett Favre, there was real talks of this team folding and leaving Green Bay. How does does the community around the Packers fandom, the state of Wisconsin handle losing, the biggest star they've had in 15 years to a major market in New York? Is the city of Green Bay affected in other ways off the field, you think?
Not really. It's funny, my co-founder at CHTV, Corey Banke, mentioned this yesterday. He lives in Green Bay. I live here in New York, but he said, because I asked him point blank, what are people talking about? Like, what's the vibe around town? And he's like, everyone I talk to is sick of talking about it. Yeah. I mean, I think this has been coming for such a long time. I think a lot of people were ready last year. A lot of fans were ready to turn the page after the loss in the playoffs to the 49ers. It was like, okay, if they haven't done it the last 2 years, probably not going to get it done with this quarterback at this point in his career. A lot of people were ready then. Now you go through everything they went through this season. All the kind of conversation about the possibility of this trade happening. At this point, I think most fans are not only kind of resolved for it happening, but they just want to get it on with.
Right, because fans were ready last year, and instead the Packers gave him an extension, right? And that was a completely different direction.
Completely.
I think, if when Aaron Rodgers leaves the Packers, moves on to the Jets, a lot of people are looking at this from an Aaron Rodgers perspective, but when you look at it from a Packers perspective, right? They got Jordan Love, they still got a lot of talent. What is the expectation of this Packers team minus an Aaron Rodgers? Is it full rebuild, or can they get things done?
It's funny you ask that. I get asked this almost every day on our live chats. I think there's obviously going to be somewhat of a recalibration, right? As far as, okay, when Aaron's in town, it's definitely Super Bowl or bust. It's got to be because of who he is and everything he's accomplished. You do turn the page to Jordan, and you have to, I think, kind of reset expectations a little bit. But as you said, there's still a lot of talent there. I mean, and here's the other thing. If they were rebuilding, like truly trying to rip the Band-Aid off, they wouldn't be kind of restructuring guys like Kenny Clark and Jair Alexander and David Bakhtiari. They'd most likely be moving on from some of those guys, getting out of their cap situation because they are up against it, especially once they trade Aaron. So I do think their expectation is, we're trying to kind of steer the ship a little bit. And yes, I think next year the playoffs are the goal. Like if you can hopefully win the division, but definitely vie for a wild card spot. I think that's entirely realistic, but certainly, okay, we are contenders now. I know it's title town, but I think you have to adjust expectations a little bit.
A little bit.
All right, so Aaron, you live in New York. You're a huge Packer fan, so you've been watching Aaron Rodgers, and you're really familiar with him. Mm-hmm. What should the New York fan base, who kind of doesn't really know much about him, what should they expect from this guy in terms of his demeanor? How's he going to interact? I mean, do you anticipate the New York fan base really gravitating and accepting Aaron Rodgers and his quirkiness as their quarterback?
That's a word for it, right? I mean, if they win, they're going to love him. Right? I do think I'm fascinated to see Aaron in a different environment simply because this is all, Green Bay is all he's known, right? I mean, been there for 18 years. That's a long time. And he mentioned a couple weeks ago on McAfee about how he's never been a free agent. He's never been in a position where he can kind of pick his destination. And he can't really now. I mean, I think there's one suitor. We're all clear on that. But to be in an entirely different situation, I think is going to be fascinating. And I do wonder if that kind of energizes him a little bit, especially considering the Packers have made it so abundantly clear that they're ready to move on. Does he get a little chip on his shoulder, a la Brett Favre, want to stick it back to the Packers? I think a little bit. And I'm kind of fascinated to see, because look, towards the end here, you guys have seen the Packers play on national television a whole lot. Things going wrong, guys running the wrong routes, maybe a blitz pickup gets blown, and Aaron's kind of frustrated, and we've all seen the close-ups, and God knows the television producers love to push in on him when things go wrong. So I do wonder if being in a new environment, lots of people doubting him, I suspect that that's going to pick him up a little bit, and he's going to have a little bit more fire. He's going to have a little bit more energy. And I do think not only his teammates, but the fan base, they're going to respond to that.
And he might actually miss that simpler lifestyle when he's here in New York and getting settled and realize, wait a minute,
possibly,
there's some comforts back home. It's 18 years of his life.
He's going to miss Chives, his favorite restaurant.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what else in Wisconsin is he going to miss, you think? You've been here in New York now for a while.
It's funny because as small as Green Bay is, it's the smallest market in the NFL. We all know that. But you do live, especially as a Packers player, you do live in a bit of a fishbowl existence. But I think he's so kind of used to that just in life because of who he is and what a big star he is. I think he's going to really love the anonymity that New York provides. The idea that you can disappear, or even if I was at a bar the other night, and Madeline Klein was right next to me, and I'm like, this is New York. You know, I'm just hanging out. There's one of the biggest stars going right now, and we're just next to each other having a drink. And I think Aaron will embrace that kind of ideal and vibe. But I do think he has mentioned a couple times some of his favorite restaurants, some of his favorite haunts. I'm sure he'll miss some of that, a little bit.
If he wants a little taste of home, you know, he can go out to a DJ Dad night and see one of his favorite Packers reporters on the ones and twos out of Queens. DJ Dad.
DJ
you know?
Dad.
What a plug.
You know, I gotta get the plug out there. This man's multi-talented over here.
Kirk, I owe you for that one.
It's a solid
DJ Dad. I gotta hear some. I gotta hear
I'll send Amani out, huh?
Oh yeah, this man's on it. But you know, when you look at Aaron Rodgers, the other thing too I keep thinking about with Aaron Rodgers to the Jets is just, does this further the Brett Favre comparison? Because Brett Favre also went to the Jets,
right?
I mean, it's like of all the teams to go to when you're trying to differentiate yourself from your predecessor, you're just following. Does he also do a stint with the Vikings?
Well, that's where we draw the line.
Yeah.
That's not allowed.
I mean,
shout out Dad. No way. No way. I mean, yeah, I think that's inevitable. It's funny though because like when the season ended and it was kind of like what's going to happen, and then at least in the media, a market started to kind of form as potential suitors, like the Raiders possibly could get in on it. The Jets were mentioned often, but it kept being like, oh, wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah.
But now it's a reality, and I do think, yeah, it's kind of inevitable that those comparisons are going to get made. But it's funny because people kind of forget. I mean, I remember going to Brett's first game here in New York, both preseason and kind of the regular season, and he, you know, for as much kind of having to figure it out as he went along in new space, blah blah blah. He was playing really well that one season in New York prior to getting hurt.
Yeah.
Like people kind of forget that, but he was actually playing pretty darn well, and they were kind of talking about, oh, they could make a playoff run and blah blah blah, and then he got hurt and then kind of fell off at the end. But I think again, if Aaron comes in here, he's already got Alan Lazard in the mix. He's got Nathaniel Hackett there as his offensive coordinator. I think he can make some hay, and I think again, if they win, it's going to be exciting here in New York.
I'm glad you brought up Lazard and Hackett because it's been such an interesting part of this whole thing is the idea of Aaron coming to town but doing it with his guys and his comforts of home. And what are your thoughts on whether it's Cobb or Mercedes Lewis or Lazard now? Talk about those guys coming to New York and what you expect from them.
Yeah, and all role players, right? Even Lazard, who was, you know, nominally wide receiver 1 in Green Bay last year, I think they're guys that Aaron obviously is close with and knows well, but they know their roles. They know how they fit, and especially when it comes to how Aaron likes to run things. Him and Hackett in the same building, I think, will be beneficial to everybody. But look, I know there was a report yesterday about a list of guys. One of those guys, OBJ, is on that list.
Amani on the list.
Amani is definitely on the list.
Totally.
Amani and Jordy Nelson, I believe, were also kind of off the tweet, but on the list. Yeah. But like, and it's so funny because in this day and age, Twitter takes off and runs with it. But look, Peyton Manning did the same thing when he was, you know, ended up with the Denver Broncos. He made a list. Like, yeah, you want your superstar quarterback to be comfortable. You want him to give him every opportunity to succeed. I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing in a bunch of guys who we trust. And I understand there is talent on this Jets roster already. I get that. But man, this is Aaron Rodgers, and we all know about the hand signals, and he wants guys on the same page. And bring in some guys who know the hand signals. Bring in some guys who can tell these other young guys with the Jets, like, look, this is how we do it. We're going to move the ball. We're going to score points. Get on board.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at Aaron Rodgers and you look at him in New York, I just kind of am very interested to see how he's going to like take on the city and just this. I just trying to see him in this big city and see how he really fits in. And is he gonna? Because I don't think people in the media are gonna sit there and be accepting of him just telling everybody, getting off to a slow start and just saying, oh, just relax.
Yeah, right.
That ain't gonna work.
Gives it a shit.
RELAX.
Yeah, that's just not gonna work.
JETS. They all spell, it all works.
Lots of spelling happening.
Yeah, because he's not going to be able to control the narrative, the media narrative. And how do you think that was going to affect Aaron Rodgers?
I think at this point I think it was Jason Gay with the Wall Street Journal pointed this out. It's like, you know, he hasn't just, you know, been in a hut somewhere. He's been the star quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, who are an international brand. It's like Manchester United. Like, he has been a monster star. And yes, New York, the market is very different, but he knows how to tune that out. You know, like today, the back page has Aaron Rodgers on it, on the New York Post. And he's probably going to be on the back page of the New York Post a whole lot for the next couple of years. So It's just, yes, is the environment around him a little different? Probably, but my sense is that he already knows how to shut all that out. He's got a private plane. He can go anywhere he wants, whenever he wants.
And, he's not living in a hut, but he's gone to a hut.
He's gone to a dark hut.
Everybody, of course, talking about Aaron Rodgers in New York, and everybody really across the country and around the world talking about the Bonjour breakfast battle. Do you have a breakfast favorite or something that's a go-to for you?
Okay, look. I saw the bracket, and I'm going to reserve judgment just because it's a new kind of sprung on me thing. But can I just say, I mean, bacon is just unfair against anything. Like, the bacon should have its own kind of place. The idea that bacon has to go up against anybody. I mean, look at cheesy grits. Cheesy grits, like, it has a chance against bacon. I mean,
it didn't win out of its game.
Once it gets a favorable matchup.
It barely got in, but it's in.
Yeah, but look at that final.
How did cheesy grits get in?
That Final Four matchup that everybody's waiting for, bacon and pancakes, might not be such an easy path, Aaron, to the championship for bacon.
You think bacon's going to beat coffee?
It has to. It's bacon.
I know, but there's a whole bunch of.
My daughter, my now 16-year-old, then probably 4 or 5-year-old daughter Violet had a shirt. If you don't like bacon, you're wrong. That's just it. That is number one.
Shout out to Violet. And shout out to you for coming in and talking Packers with us at a time when everybody in New York is obviously fired up for Aaron Rodgers.
Hurry up already.
Aaron Nagler, co-founder of CHTV. Thank you for joining the show.
Thanks
we appreciate you. More show when we return here on Bonjour.
Hey, Ron.